Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to go over the new book, A Dance with Dragons by George R.R. Martin. And there will be spoilers, so if you haven't read it, you may not wish to watch this. But for those who have, I have to say it was pretty badass. And I'm going to first start with what I dislike so I can focus on the cooler stuff. So one of the dislikes that I had for this book, one of them was just some of the phrases they kept repeating, and I don't know why they kept repeating them so much, but for example, they always say words are wind, and like this was repeated like everywhere in the book. It's like someone will make a promise, the other person will say words are wind, and or they'll think it, and it was just so like repetitive. I guess maybe it's tying into Winds of Winter or something coming. I don't know. That phrase and much and more and little and less. I don't know if that was a really common phrase in the other books too, but for some reason they just kept jumping out at me. Every time I read, the each chapter, they'd just be like, much and more. No, I have little and less. Do you have anything to tell me? Yeah, I have much and more to tell you. It's like, I don't know. It just, for some reason, just jumped out at me. The thing that jumped out at me, and it just kind of, like, it's not like a horrible, it's more like a annoyance, was the fact that, like, everyone, like, I don't know, if I just felt like a similar tone. Like, in the first, like, two-thirds of the book, I felt like this similar, like, tone was coming from, like, each character. And it may have just been how I was reading it, but I just felt like everyone just had, like, a thought, their real thoughts, and they would say something. And, like, everyone was doing that. Like, Tyrion was doing that. Daenerys was doing that. And, like, everyone just kept... Like, in all their dialogue, it'd always be, like, their rule, clever... Like, I might have said, blah, 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 blah. But then they say something else. Here's a prime example of what I mean. And this is verbatim from the books.
I'm so poor, so poor. Please help me, sir. I have little and less. I tried to feed my family mushrooms, and there was much and more mushrooms, but I could not satisfy their hunger, for the hunger was much and more than the mushrooms were much and more, and I wish I had much and more mushrooms that I could feed my children.
Tyrion might have said, I have mushrooms in my boots that you can have, from which if you do eat, you and your children will never hunger again. Instead, he replied, how do I know you're not just some rich whore trying to scam more coin? Words are wind, woman. What else? And then the last thing that was just kind of like, why is he doing this? Was all of the feasts. The feasts are like everywhere you go in the book, like every chapter, there's just another feast. There's just like weddings, there's big events, victories from battles. Everyone wants to have a feast all the time. I didn't really get that. Well, I mean, I kind of get that maybe I'm guessing that's what it's for, is like a foreshadowing for Winds of Winter when there's not going to be food. The last, like, general dislike I had was I just felt he's particularly, like, I don't know, I want to say, like, I don't want to quite say sexist, but it kind of felt that way. All the female characters were just like, they always had thoughts like, I'm a female, so I'm weak. Or they would just be like useless. They'd like try something and fail. And just like, you had a few cool female characters, and then just like bad stuff would just happen to them. Like, I don't know, like Cersei, she, gets humiliated. And no one really liked her, ever. She was always kind of bitchy and always kind of perceived negatively, but yeah, at the same time, she had some good qualities, but everything that she ever had was just, she was just made fun of and thrown off to the side as nothing. And Asha Greyjoy, she's just like, she kind of showed some spunk at sometimes with her like, throwing axes and stuff. She wanted to fight people, but then like, like if you read her chapters, she's always just like, oh, but I'm a woman, and like Cersei at the same time, like, oh, if only I was born a man, like Jaime, I should have had the sword, or whatever she said. Every female character I read about was either just complaining that they're a woman, or just like shown to be weak because they're a woman. There was the one female character that could have did something cool, which was like they had that pit fighter in Marine, and she was like, she's so good that no other woman can face her, no one would challenge her, and so they put her up against a boar, and she gets killed. So the boar kills her. We didn't really see anything from her perspective, but from what they said about her, she seems pretty cool. And then she just dies and gets eaten by a dragon. So there you go. That's how I got rid of the one cool female character. Well, there are others, but I'll get to them. I'm going to get to them in a second here. I'm going to go through the characters now. We had Theon, or as he was known as Reek, throughout most of the book. We had a couple of his POVs. He's with Lord Bolton's bastard son, and he's the only son now, so he's kind of like the heir to the throne. And we find out he's a cruel monster, and he just is basically just retardedly inhumane. Just I don't know how he gets pleasure out of any of this, but he's sick and demented individual, and he wants to lay claim to the north, get all those people behind him. So he goes and takes Winterfell and sets up a fake Arya to marry, and he has Reek, who is really Theon Greyjoy, vouch for that area. It's kind of alluded in the story though that Reek will turn back into Theon, so his like betrayal is kind of hinted at, and the biggest hints I saw was just mostly his focus on, my name's Reek, it rhymes with sneak, I gotta remember, and so he has to like keep remembering his fake name, right? So this kind of shows that he's having this little identity crisis. So it didn't surprise me too much when I was really kind of expecting it when he betrayed Bolton and took Arya to Stannis. So that wasn't too much of a surprise, and I think there's significant foreshadowing. Those chapters are kind of okay. They're more like kind of gross and just, you know, you're in the mind of a crazy guy who's just used to being abused, and it's just everything. He doesn't know if it's a trap, if he's going to lose another finger. Let's move on to another character, Daenerys. Now, Dany, she did some cool stuff. I was really happy with her chapters. I think she's a sign of one of the strong females still in the series. So yeah, that's why I kind of enjoy reading about Dany. That, and obviously she has dragons, so she's really fun to read about. A couple of the cool things going on with her. They developed her a lot. She's now, it seems to be developing control over the dragons. I always thought they were going to go do a the skin changer type thing where she can get to the dragon's mind. I still kind of feel that that's where they're going to go with this. That she can just like communicate with the dragons mentally, and that'll solve a bunch of her problems of trying to like tell it which way to turn and control it and all that. I feel they're making a pretty strong connection between Jon Snow and Dany. Like, they always like keep talking about the need for her to, Sir Barristan mostly, about her need to kill the girl, you know, and so she can become a woman. Or he's like, you know, Dany liking Dario, that's the girl inside of her. And they're doing like the same kind of parallelism with Jon. And for me, that kind of suggests that these two characters are going to get intertwined. That, and if you believe and know about R plus L equals J, which they're also kind of hinting at pretty strongly in this book, Rhaegar and Lyanna actually being Jon's parents, then yeah, there's pretty substantial claim that those two will get together and be kind of on the same side. Though I do hope he doesn't date her, because I'm kind of disgusts me. She's born of incest, and I really don't want Jon to be marrying someone born of incest. I'd much rather see him with Val or one of the Vipers, or just holding on to his vows and, you know, staying solo. The only thing I disliked about Daenerys is like she is still a pretty strong female character, but they did show those kind of like that suggestion of weakness where she, like, when she married that Hizak guy or whatever, and now like he's kind of king and pretty much making a bunch of decisions for her, and she needed him for peace. And I don't know. I just felt like it would have been cool if she could have achieved peace on her own. But that's fine. I still think she's probably one of the strongest female characters. But going on that tangent of strong female characters, there's one I cannot overlook, and I was excited to read the few chapters she had in this book, and that was Arya Stark. So, Arya, to my delight, has kind of maintained her like strong will, her confidence in herself, and yeah, she kept being a strong female character. You know, male female doesn't matter to her. She can kill them both equally. You know, she's just very much the kind of characters you kind of like to see from time to time. So she's doing really cool stuff. I'm excited for her. I did like the joke when he was like, "You need to be humble to be part of the many-faced gods," and she's like, "Well, I can be humbler than anyone." You know, like that's not very humble to say. I thought it was funny, and I still love when she. This is from an earlier book when she bit that eye with a worm coming out of that guy's eye. She's like, "I've never seen that before." It just kind of shows her confidence, and yeah, she's a really cool character. It does seem though that she is still keeping some hidden feelings, so we'll see if they can completely extinguish them. I don't think they will. I think it'll get close, but I think she'll recall who she was and eventually play a part in the books that will support Jon and Bran and all them. Uh, yeah. So there's Arya. I wish she had more chapters. Going on with the females,